Capitalism is killing babies. I feel like screaming at the top of my lungs. How can we allow our society to be organized this way? My daughter's daycare classroom has 5 cases of RSV, including my daughter. 3 babies under 6 months of age are in the hospital, and 1 is in the ICU. 2 of the hospitalized babies are preemie twins. We can safely assume nearly all of the children in daycare are there because their parents need to work. I know that was the case for us. The mother of the preemie twins with fragile little immune systems was forced to leave her children in a place where she knew they would most likely be exposed to dangerous diseases. She had no choice, because she had to go back to work before they were ready. Fuck capitalism. Fuck any system that requires parents to put their children in harm's way in order to keep a roof over their heads. And for what? Productivity? Profit? The accumulation of wealth for someone else? I apologize for my lack of empathy before having a child of my own. I had no dog in the fight, so I did not pay attention to the fight for adequate parental leave. Now I know. This is a matter of life and death for mothers and for babies. This is a problem for society. They keep us living paycheck to paycheck so that we can't step out of the workforce. Keeping poor people poor is their only goal, because it forces us to sell our labor to live, at the expense of our most vulnerable citizens. ETA. I think this has sparked a meaningful conversation about whether the working class should have the privilege of reproducing. If you think working class people should not reproduce, and only the wealthy, those who can afford not to work, should reproduce, some introspection might be in order. This may not be the sub for you. Chipping in here. Guaranteed paid leave is very possible in any developed nation. It is healthy for the mother, the baby, and society. Canada has something called employment insurance. Everyone pays a small amount per check to the program. If you get fired, or go on maternity or parental leave, the insurance pays out a percentage of your wage. It's not perfect, but it allowed me to take 1 year paid leave with my second baby. He didn't have to go to daycare until he was already learning to walk. My body was fully healed. The fact the US doesn't have that as the bare minimum is an outrage, and people should keep pushing hard until they get it. You can't tell people not to have kids they can't afford now that Roe is dead. If they can't afford kids, they can't afford to move to a pro-choice state either. Systemic problems require structural solutions, not individual finger-wagging. Edit. It wasn't okay when Roe was still on the books either. In part because rights equals access, and travel is expensive too. I don't get it. You can't have an abortion. You can't afford to have the kid. So abstinence is the only answer. Okay, so when everyone decides to stop having kids altogether and then there isn't a workforce, then what? Because the kids of the rich aren't going to want to do the menial work that they think they are too good for. Capitalism is killing babies, the elderly, and many in between. The US has never come close to a Bolshevik-type revolution, though it should have. People are just not quite desperate enough to revolt. Infant mortality rates are 3 times higher in the US than in Canada. 3 times. 2 out of every 3 babies that dies in the States is sacrificed to the altar of corporate greed. United we stand, divided we beg. Vote yes on unions. Assuming you're in the US like me. Currently I'm appalled at how we have no guaranteed maternity leave. Literally every other developed country has around 4x the amount of leave and paid available to mothers and fathers, and they don't have to fight with their employers for it since it's provided by the government. This is totally putting kids in harm's way. All that bonding time the child is missing out on with mom and dad. No wonder our country is having so many mental health problems, all for capitalism. So many mothers are forced to go back to work after 6-12 weeks of unpaid or partially paid leave if their employer even offers it. Long ago I worked in a grocery store and I saw several women who worked there come back after only a week or two after birth. I literally feel like my generation was brainwashed into believing America was number one. It's infuriating to me when people act like reproduction should be a class privilege. So much for reproductive freedom. All of this. Yes, I am shouting. Exclamation mark. Breastfeeding, light skin tone, pouting. Fuck any system that requires parents people to b. put their children in harm's way to have a roof over their heads. I really wanted kids earlier on in life, but after the past 4 years really seeing the death drive of capitalism kicked into overdrive and the spreading fascism that breeds, I couldn't think of bringing a kid into a world that is this unforgiving and cruel. I'm sorry you're experiencing this with your child, but it's only going to get worse from here. We hear the argument, don't have kids if you can't afford them. And in many cases that is true. Especially with those that have a multitude of children and choose not to do anything to independently provide for them. However, we are coming to a point where the middle-class worker, is that even a thing anymore? Can't afford to have children. Where couples who have degrees and skills and support still can't afford a child. Soon having children will only be for the elite. Where will that put us in as a society? I understand that having children isn't everyone's cup of tea, but it shouldn't put those who do want them in debt and are forced to be endured slaves to the workforce just to be able to provide. Children should have the luxury of growing up at home and in a safe community. Not to be raised 8 hours a day 5 to 7 days a week by corporate daycares. As long as it happens after the babies are born, capitalism is okay with it. Frowning face. Plenty of other jurisdictions with better regulated capitalism don't have this type of issue. The US is its own world of capitalism hell. Domestic labor is labor and needs to be valued for the long-term survival of everyone. But capitalism only cares about quarterly growth. Also, it's just inhumane to treat people like that. Being pregnant is essential, spending 9 months in an unstable state of health followed by hours of labor and/or major surgery like a C-section. Sending someone back to work after that without even a full month of rest is inhumane. ETA. I think this has sparked a meaningful conversation about whether the working class should have the privilege of reproducing. If you think working class people should not reproduce, and only the wealthy, those who can afford not to work, should reproduce, some introspection might be in order. This may not be the sub for you. That one. People are free to make their own person choices, but the fact that we have so few safety nets in the first place should be concerning, and reproduction shouldn't become another luxury good, equivalent to a Hermes handbag or a Bentley. If you can't afford them, don't have them, is a remedy for 10-15 years from now. Those children are here now and the problem needs to be solved in real time. If you don't agree with that, then the solution is to give your children up for adoption, which is ignoring the problem, not facing it. The problem today is the repercussions of normalizing the two-income household. It's become the standard, not the exception. Not everyone makes perfect choices. Some people have a kid because they think they can do it and go into it with the best of intentions, only to find themselves 510 years later rethinking it because of ABC and XYZ. Having sex, which results in a child, is a part of the human condition. And if people were treated like people instead of products, then we likely wouldn't be in this position. killing everyone but the capitalist. You are correct. Daycares are breeding grounds for the worst diseases, and each kid brings their own unique germs from their house to the daycare, and in return receives germs from other kids' houses. Children who attend mass daycare are constantly sick, and the cycle never ends. If you're wealthy, you get a nanny that comes to your house, which mitigates all of this. If you're not wealthy and need to send your kids to daycare, then you're signing up for constant sickness from the moment you put them in until they get old enough to go to school. Basically, the solution is have more money. Your kids won't go through this. It's not attainable for 98% of the working class with children. I don't have a dog in this fight and never will. But I will absolutely fight tooth and nail for all parents to have as many accommodations as they need to make parenthood less stressful. I don't claim a school tax credit that I'm eligible for because I haven't been able to get a definitive answer if that actually removes money from the schools at all. So I don't want to chance it.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.